Tonight, intimidation and harassment online.
They were threatening to stab him or shank him, as their words are. There was a hit put out on our dog, so we had to stop my son walking our dog. And then they threatened to burn the house down with the baby in it.
Cracking down on the internet bullies.
The whole concept of bullying through social networking sites is something that has really exploded in the last couple of years. It's a new issue, it's a developing issue, and it's one we do take seriously.
Good evening and welcome to the Tonight programme. Latest figures show 1 in 3 young people is a victim of harassment, intimidation or bullying. Not as you might think in the school playground, but in their own homes through the internet. The increased use of social networking sites, emails and mobile technology has led to a growth in so-called cyber crimes, with more and more adults as well as children suffering online harassment. Now the Crown Prosecution Service has officially recognised the scale of the problem and is urging the courts to hand down tougher punishments. Tonight, former police detective and child protection expert Mark Williams-Thomas investigates the bullies online.
This is the most common perception of bullying, physical harassment and intimidation in school between the bully and the victim. Whilst this still goes on, things have changed. The real threat from the bully is not only in the playground anymore, but on computers and mobile phones. If a bully wants to make someone's life hell, they can threaten, harass and intimidate anonymously. And this is not just happening to children, but harassment can go on into adult life too, and the effects can be devastating.
Online bullying is a growing epidemic and can affect all age groups, but it's not the same as normal bullying. New mobile and internet technology means there's no hiding place. The bully can gain access to you all day and every day. For years I've worked in child protection and know only too well the huge psychological damage bullying can have way into later life. Now cyberbullying poses an even greater risk to all of us.
And one family in Blackpool know only too well the impact of online bullying. Lynn Jones's son Matthew was relentlessly tormented online by college and school bullies.
He went on Facebook quite a lot, and his friends used that as a method of communication because he didn't go out a lot, but also so did the bullies. And whatever he did to try and ban them, they just came back from another computer under another name. He gave up in the end, he just couldn't get away from it.
Anonymous bullies were messaging every day, telling him he was worthless and he should take his own life.
He'd sob, sat in here, led in here, he wouldn't let us in to help him. He'd go in the shower, you could hear him sobbing there in the morning, really sobbing. And it got to the stage towards the end where he begged me to let him die.
Because Matthew's bullies were online, they could taunt him day and night, an example of the devastating impact of cyberbullying.
15 years ago, you could go home and escape to the sanctuary of your own home. But now, they'll get a message on their phone, they'll log on when they get home onto the internet, they'll get emails, they'll go onto their social networking site profile and people have written stuff to them, sent them messages on their profile. Maybe there'll be a video about them. They might get a drop call on their mobile phone. They're being targeted in so many different ways.
Aged just 17, Matthew took his own life, convinced the bullies were right. And it was only after he died that the family found emails and messages on his computer taunting him.
In particular, there was 3 girls that were bullying him, goading him into killing himself, said he should because his life was worthless and he didn't deserve to live.
The family feel the website and messaging service used by Matthew's bullies should have spotted the level of abuse and threats, so action could have been taken before it was too late.
Well, somebody's got to take responsibility for it. You can't just keep passing the buck around from one organisation to the other. Somebody's got to bring it to book, grab it and say we've got to do something about it, because computers now are a way of life with the children.
The question I want to ask, when the impact of cyberbullying can be so great and affect as many as 1 in 3 young people, whose job is it to monitor the internet? Is it parents, schools, the police, or is it the websites themselves?
The challenges investigating online bullying are great, simply because many bullies taunt their victims anonymously. Elle has been harassed for the last 5 years by an untraceable stalker. This is one of the earlier messages that you received.
Yeah.
Just read it out to me.
The message is kind of goading me on. It says, I'm waiting for a reply. If you don't reply, I'm going to continue making your life hell and you won't like it.
So how do you feel now? So this is one of your early messages. How are you feeling?
Well, when I first got this, I hadn't had a history of knowing that they were going to abuse me. So I just looked at this and thought this was somebody maybe just being a bit too offensive, and tried to think no more of it.
So serious was the harassment in Elle's case, the police did trace the computer the stalker was using, but it was in a public library hundreds of miles away. So the investigation ended, but the intimidation escalated. So you received this message. This is just after 9:30 in the morning. The fact is, you need sorting out. Maybe not by me, maybe by a hitman who happens to be my best friend, and he'll do anything for me, and he might rearrange your features.
Not knowing who the person is, I don't know where they live, I don't know how close they are. So turning the computer off at this point really didn't mean much to me. They could have been outside my house, and yeah, I did start to fear for my safety, yeah.
The cyber stalker was sending up to 10 threatening emails a day and posting nasty comments on different websites, and often from public computers.
It was quite a dark time in my life, and I kind of felt there was no support. There was no one there that could say, we're going to find this person, we're going to catch them. Like you do if you're abused in the street, you go to a police station, but you can't go anywhere on the internet if somebody sends you a threat. And I just felt very alone and very scared.
Earlier this year, and after 5 years of harassment, Elle received a personal email from the female stalker, and it was a breakthrough. Now the police had the name, the stalker was arrested and later cautioned.
I was really angry that she was only cautioned, because for 5 years this woman took over my life. I couldn't sleep because of it. I argued with people, I distanced myself from people, I stopped doing the work I love doing. It affected my life offline, whether I had the computer on or not.
Under caution, the stalker carried on the harassment, so the police eventually issued a 3-year restraining order, and finally Elle's ordeal was over. Last month's announcement that the Crown Prosecution Service would treat harassment cases far more seriously, it's hoped in future cases like Elle's will lead to tougher sentences.
The whole concept of bullying through social networking sites is something that has really exploded in the last couple of years. The police service has to wake up to the reality that this isn't going to go away, this problem is not going to go away. The police service need to, I suppose, realise that people are at risk on the internet. It doesn't have to be physical harm, sometimes it's real emotional and psychological harm. It's a new issue, it's a developing issue, and it's one we do take seriously.
Despite the growing epidemic of online harassment and tough talking by the police, there's only ever been one high-profile prison sentence handed down because of cyberbullying. That was of teenager Keely Horton. It was a story Tonight featured earlier this year. We interviewed Keely's victim, Emily Moore, about the history of bullying.
She threw her drink glass at me. She was shouting like, I'll give you something to phone the police about. And I was crying, my friend hugged me. I sort of thought nothing more of it over the weekend until on the Sunday night my friend who I'd been dancing with rang me and said, have you seen Keely's Facebook page? And who writes that on a public forum for people to read, you know, that you're going to murder someone? It's not something you write with a light-hearted, it's not something that can be read into as a joke at all. My heart sank and I was just like, this girl has got it in for me, like it was some sort of vendetta.
Statistically, girls are more likely to be victims of cyberbullying and more likely to bully. Keely was arrested and jailed for cyberbullying after she pleaded guilty to harassment. And tonight, Keely speaks for the first time on TV about why she did it.
I didn't think she would take it how she took it, because people say it all the time, it's just a figure of speech. So I'm not actually going to go and murder someone.
Now Keely has a criminal record. She says her bullying behaviour has cost her everything, unable to find a job and publicly branded as cyberbully.
Because I was angry at the time, it just came out. I was sat with my friends when I did it. It wasn't just being horrible. I wasn't like, yeah, I'm going to kill her. I wasn't like that. If I could go back, I wouldn't have wrote what I wrote on my status. But it was just a spur of the moment thing, and I didn't realise it was going to go as far as it did.
With police promising a tougher stance against cyberbullying, it's expected more cases like Keeley's will come to court. But many feel it's the websites themselves who could do more to stop cyberbullying happening in the first place. Many of the victims are targeted by bullies who set up fake web profiles on social networking sites and post offensive comments, pictures and videos for everyone else to see.
We've heard from a lot of children and young people on social networking sites who've experienced cyberbullying and have tried to report it and not seen any action taken. We've heard from parents who also don't know how they can report it. The mechanisms aren't clear enough or not simple enough for them to be able to report it.
15-year-old Katie Frost from Daventry had a fake site set up in her name. It was full of abuse and she had no idea how to remove the site. Katie uses a new networking site called Formspring. This site allows users to set up their own page with photos and information about themselves, and friends ask questions. Except for Katie, a bully used it to get to her.
This page was created. Tell me about it.
I started getting questions from anonymous users, and then I just said, who is this, because I would like to sort it out with you. And then they just posted this link on my wall, and it was to a new Formspring page called I Hate Katie. And it just said, ask me anything about Katie.
The I Hate Katie Frost page was targeted with abusive and threatening messages, all anonymous.
You're obviously hated, so go and die.
She must be disabled, retard and pretty unappealing to the eyes.
Katie had no idea who was sending these messages, and worse still, she had no idea how to remove them. She emailed Formspring and asked them to remove it, but they didn't.
So you've heard nothing back from Formspring, having sent this some 5 months ago. And does the page still exist?
It's still up there.
Katie is not alone. In fact, her friend, Jo Patterson, has also been targeted by online bullies using the same website, Formspring. Last year, Jo became openly bisexual, and that exposed him to months of online abuse.
Why are you so ugly?
I hate gays.
Our gays from a different planet called Please Kill Us All.
How did you feel about receiving these comments?
To begin with, I kind of passed them off a little bit, but as they kept coming in greater amounts, it was a very upsetting experience. It made me feel very alone, and that the bullies were right, and that I really was all the things that they were saying.
The bullies were able to use the Formspring website to abuse Jo, who, like many young people, kept it from his school and his parents.
It made school a lot more difficult, kind of going in and knowing that all of the people that had said all of these things were in the school, and I was walking around with them. They could be people that I regard as friends.
There's a growing concern that stories like Jo's and Katie's show how online harassment and intimidation can go on unchecked, without parents knowing and web companies slow to remove offensive comments. It was only after 5 months, and when Tonight contacted Formspring, that they removed the I Hate Katie Frost webpage. And for Jo, he suffered in silence, and abusive messages have been left online. Jo's mum Linda feels social networking sites should respond quicker to this type of bullying and remove any offensive material.
Do you think social networking sites can do more?
I think they need to take ownership of this and recognise that it's their responsibility as much as it is the responsibility of the parent, and that the parent plays a huge part as well. You need to make sure your kid is as safe online as you possibly can, but if you're taking revenue from this website, you've got to take the bad with the good.
Tonight contacted the website Formspring, who say they have a support team who respond to concerns within 24 hours and say it's simple for users to change security settings to prevent anonymous questions. But anti-bullying charities believe social networking sites need to be far more proactive in dealing with cyberbullying.
Social networking sites need to take responsibility if they are being reported to. And if cyberbullying is being reported to them, then they need to take down content. They need to take down that cyberbullying. They have a duty to do that. And we believe they could do that effectively and immediately within 6 hours.
Tonight has uncovered other examples of social networking sites ignoring reports of intimidation and harassment. Here in Oxford, local youths use Facebook to threaten a family with violence. Peter Crane and his daughter Ellie received months and months of abuse aimed at Ellie's son Ashley, but despite reporting it, they claim Facebook took no action.
Ellie, how did Ashley's bullying first start?
He fell out with a group of boys and they started attacking the house, throwing stones and snowballs and generally being quite abusive. So we got ASBOs against several of them, which kept them away from the house. So then it transferred onto internet-based bullying. That's really where it went from there.
With police restraining orders stopping the bullies approaching the house, Facebook was used to further torment the family.
The threats initially started just on a normal profile page, but then they created some other pages, didn't they? Tell me about those.
The main one that started up was there from January to up until a few weeks ago, and that was pretty bad. They were threatening to stab him or shank him, as their words are. There was a hit put out on our dog, so we had to stop my son walking our dog, and then they threatened to burn the house down with the baby in it.
Despite the severity of the intimidation, there was little they could do as the bullies were difficult to trace, so they repeatedly asked Facebook to remove the abuse.
We just kept reporting it. I'd put links on my other child's page so that my friends, because I was blocked, so that my friends could report it. We had people all over the country reporting it and it still wouldn't go away.
Desperate for the page to be removed, Peter and his daughter Ellie carried out their own investigation, tracking the members and their parents to try and appeal to them directly to stop.
Ellie, you made contact with the mother of one of these boys that was bullying your son. What did she say?
She was absolutely horrified at the site that was set up. She reported them herself several times, and she assured me that her son would stop any future behaviour or threats.
It was only when Peter and Ellie traced the creator of the Facebook page that it was removed. Facebook told us that they respond aggressively to reports of potential abuse and that reports involving harassment are prioritised, with most reviewed within 24 hours. And they are constantly reviewing procedures to shorten the time between reporting and action taken.
We really need to keep in mind the fact that the solutions to that particular bullying incident, in the vast majority of cases, don't lie with an intervention by the online service provider. They lie with resolving the situation in the school, in the workplace, the local situation that's given rise to the cyberbullying. It's actually far more effective for somebody to confront a young person and say, you must close that group down, you must shut that profile down or stop making those comments, than to simply have Facebook remove the comments. Because the young person that way learns to change their behaviour, which ultimately is the solution to cyberbullying.
So if sites like Facebook say it's also up to us to sort bullying out locally, that's where schools come in. Every child in school has access to computers, and it's in school that the majority of bullying begins. I arranged to speak to a group of pupils at St Paul's Catholic College in Sunbury-on-Thames to hear from them the scale of cyberbullying.
So David, tell me, have you had any personal experience or you're aware of anybody who's been cyberbullied?
Yeah, I myself had a personal experience in Year 7. It was over MSN. I'd added someone that I thought was my friend, but I was obviously incorrect, as he started to bully me over MSN.
I've been a counsellor to someone who has been in that case. They were making horrendous comments about their family life and the situation they're in financially as well.
I've had friends that have been cyberbullied and it's just escalated into things much worse, like getting death threats through texts. They just got her number off of other people and started sending her things like, if you come out, then we're going to get you.
4 of the 6 children here had some experience of cyberbullying, which is why St Paul's has invested in state-of-the-art anti-bullying computer software. Here, if any cyberbullying goes on, an email alert or text is sent straight to a member of staff. So Andrew, we're in the grounds of the school. We're going to mock up a situation whereby you're going to be the bully and you're going to email a child within the school.
Yeah, so I've got a handheld computer here. What I've just prepared here is a dummy email to a dummy student account in the school. What basically happens is that it triggers something in the system, and then the system picks it up as that it needs to alert us.
And of course we're doing this on a handheld computer, but it could just as well be a child on a mobile phone with internet access in the grounds of the school.
It can be someone from in the grounds of the school, outside, anyone that's using any kind of internet device that is sending something to any internal computer in our school, or whether the students are accessing the system remotely at home or anything like that. The system protects them throughout if they're using our school systems.
When the email is sent to the school, the software captures it and teachers can take immediate action.
We put this in some 3 years ago, and we saw right at the start that we would get quite a few of these violations which we'd need to speak to the students. We would now these days get a maximum of, say, 5 to 10 that we need to deal with in a week.
Are you telling me that this system has reduced the amount of bullying that's taken place?
I think it has massively, because the students know whether they use our school system, whether they log on in an IT room like this, or whether they log on to their email or virtual learning environment from home. We are tracking what they are doing every step of the way, and that's not there as a big brother kind of thing, but to assist them and to make sure that they're protected all the time.
In the fight against cyberbullying, the head teacher of St Paul's says this technology is the only way to properly deal with the threat.
I think 5 years ago, 10 years ago, software blocked bad things. So did it happen? Who knew? The software now captures what goes on so that we can sit down with the young person who's the victim and to support them and help them, with our counsellors, with our specialist support, just like we would with any victim of bullying, but also with the perpetrator, sit down with them and ask them and require them ultimately to take responsibility for what they've done.
Schools Inspector at Ofsted told us they do not have specific evidence about the prevalence of cyberbullying, but schools are expected to deal with all types of bullying. But the people behind this particular software used at St Paul's believe schools are still ignoring the problem. So how many schools have your software?
We have 2,500 schools, but out of a total of nearly 30,000 schools in the UK, that's quite a low number. One of the reasons that they don't take it up is because they won't put the people, and it's only one person, to look at the data and to get that reaction back from that data to be able to sort things out.
So the fact that a school doesn't have this software isn't always a monetary issue. It's sometimes an issue of simply, if we don't know about it, we don't have to deal with it.
Correct, absolutely. So they're burying their head in the sand and saying, we've got other issues on our plates, we know this is going on, but we're just going to ignore it, we're not going to use it.
For me, if someone says I can't afford to have the right kind of security system on my ICT system, then get rid of the ICT system. It's as fundamental as that. To operate with this kind of technology, with this kind of power, within a school, in a controlled environment, it's got to be done safely.
Next month, an Anti-Bullying Awareness Week aims to help parents and children recognise the threats of all types of bullying, including that online. And for the mother of Matthew Jones, who took his own life because of cyberbullying, the message is clear.
I don't think anybody thinks that this sort of thing is going to happen to them and their children. And believe me, it can. We were just an ordinary family. Matthew was an ordinary young boy, and we never knew it was going on until it was too late.
The Association of Chief Police Officers has urged victims of online stalking, harassment, intimidation or bullying to report it to the police, and has given an assurance that these offences will be taken seriously. Now, if you'd like more information on tonight's programme, please visit our website at itv.com/tonight. Until next week, though, good evening and thanks for watching. Coming up next week, with so many young families locked out of the property market, unable to afford a house of their own, are we witnessing the end of the golden era of home ownership? Sites, emails and mobile technology has led to a growth in so-called cyber crimes, with more and more adults as well as children suffering online harassment. Now the Crown Prosecution Service has officially recognised the scale of the problem and is urging the courts to hand down tougher punishments. Tonight, former police detective and child protection expert Mark Williams-Thomas investigates the bullies online.
This is the most common perception of bullying, physical harassment and intimidation. Only too well the impact of online bullying. Lynn Jones's son Matthew was relentlessly tormented online by college and school bullies.
He went on Facebook quite a lot, and his friends used that as a method of communication because he didn't go out a lot, but also so did the bullies. And whatever he did to try and ban them, they just came back from another computer under another name. He gave up in the end. He just couldn't get away from it.
Anonymous bullies were messaging every day, telling him he was worthless and he should take his own life.
He'd sob, sat in here, led in here. He wouldn't let us in to help him. He'd go in the shower. You could hear him sobbing there in the morning, really sobbing. And it got to the stage towards the end where he begged me to let him die.
In school, between the bully and the victim. Whilst this still goes on, things have changed. The real threat from the bully is not only in the playground anymore, but on computers and mobile phones. If a bully wants to make someone's life hell, they can threaten, harass and intimidate anonymously. And this is not just happening to children, but harassment can go on into adult life too, and the effects can be devastating.
Online bullying is a growing epidemic and can affect all age groups, but it's not the same as normal bullying. New mobile and internet technology means there's no hiding place. The bully can gain access to you all day and every day. For years I've worked in child protection and know only too well the huge psychological damage bullying can have way into later life. Now cyberbullying poses an even greater risk to all of us.
And one family in Blackpool know because Matthew's bullies were online, they could taunt him day and night, an example of the devastating impact of cyberbullying.
15 years ago, you could go home and escape to the sanctuary of your own home. But now, they'll get a message on their phone, they'll log on when they get home onto the internet, they'll get emails, they'll go onto their social networking site profile and people have written stuff to them, sent them messages on their profile. Maybe there'll be a video about them. They might get a drop call on their mobile phone. They're being targeted in so many different ways.
Aged just 17, Matthew took his own life, convinced the bullies were right. And it was only after he died that the family found emails and messages on his computer taunting him.
In particular, there was 3 girls that were bullying him, goading him into killing himself, said he should because his life was worthless and he didn't deserve to live.
Tonight, intimidation and harassment online.
They were threatening to stab him or shank him, as their words are. There was a hit put out on our dog, so we had to stop my son walking our dog. And then they threatened to burn the house down with the baby in it.
Cracking down on the internet bullies.
The whole concept of bullying through social networking sites is something that has really exploded in the last couple of years. It's a new issue, it's a developing issue, and it's one we do take seriously.
Good evening and welcome to the Tonight programme. Latest figures show 1 in 3 young people is a victim of harassment, intimidation or bullying. Not as you might think in the school playground, but in their own homes through the internet. The increased use of social networking